Thanks for coming. Looks like we'll have kind of a small crowd. We're still gonna mic everything. We're recording this. We put it on our YouTube channel, and then people can rewatch it afterwards. So thank you all for coming. We have a really juicy topic for everybody. This is about real estate, lease negotiation, and finding location. This is the very next thing that everyone has to do in order to move forward with their final license approval, right? And there's kind of a mess out there, as you might already have experienced, and we've got two real estate folks here to help clarify, hopefully, some of the steps that you'll need to take and some of the little devils in the details with all of the different entities that we have to deal with and navigate. So, my name is Sarah. I'm the president of the Meta Craft Cannabis Guild. We are bringing free informational sessions to the community to help you guys get through the licensing process as best as we can, and then also introduce you to industry professionals that can help support you on a more deeper level. I am, like I said, the president of the Craft Cannabis Guild. I'm also a certified professional soil scientist and agronomist. I've been in the cannabis industry for nearly 20 years. All the way from being a trimmer and a farmhand to being a chemist and entrepreneur. I built, ran, and sold an agricultural testing laboratory in Humboldt County, California, and now I'm here in Minnesota trying to help us navigate through these waters. And then next to me here, I have Jared Schroeder. He's the lead commercial cannabis specialist at Burnsville Meta Realty. He works with owners of farms, warehouses, retail locations, and local municipalities to ensure appropriate zoning. Zoning is a really big word here. So welcome to Jared. And then Amy Beganic. She's a certified Ganjier and a Coldwell banker real estate agent. Amy brings a next level understanding of the cannabis market. So I'm going to be asking a couple of questions. If you guys have questions, just raise your hand. This is fairly casual. We want to address some issues or needs that you have, but we do have things that we think that you'll need to understand as we move forward. So, do you guys have anything to say before we get started, or about yourselves or your company, or?
Working now? Okay. I'm actually with Meta Commercial Cannabis. Meta Realty is actually our residential side. So Meta Commercial Cannabis is our the commercial side. So.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for clarifying. So I guess to get started, there are some. So the very next thing we need to do is find the location, right? Because then the location will determine our build out and who we need to hire and kind of inform everything else. And I'm going to start with a broad question. What are the biggest challenges licensees are facing when trying to find a location? Like zoning issues, cities being indecisive, conflicting definitions of what their own policies mean within the government, things like that. So what are the biggest challenges? We'll get into some other details, but like highlight what my biggest problems are.
I guess kind of in my experience so far, and that's all I can really speak from, as we just recently talked about before we all sat down here, is there really is not a guidebook. And we are all pioneers, and we are all trying to navigate this space. But recently, in my experience working with some of the clients that I've already touched base with, landlords are obviously one of the problems. Very often, they are still very hesitant to open up their spaces to cannabis cultivation or dispensary, depending on what you're working with. Cities also have their own problems as far as getting things ironed out in a way that makes sense to the cannabis client and to the cannabis entrepreneurs that are coming into this space. There's a lot of conflicting information, and whether that's from the city or whether it's from the OCM or whether it's from the landlords, I feel like this lack of continuity and information is probably the biggest problem. The landlords are doubting the validity of licenses and people coming out to look at their properties, and they're very hesitant to sign leases with this industry. A lot of that has to do with some federal issues as well as some state issues. But I think that for the most part, It is just right now trying to navigate each space on its own. You find a space that you like, try to navigate with that space. Try to talk to the city about that space. Things aren't definite. Things aren't black and white right now. I wish that they were. That would make my job a lot easier. But right now, like I said, things are not that black and white. Jared, why don't I give you a chance to...
So lots of hurdles.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good point. There's been a lot of just back and forth. Landlords are very hesitant. It's something new. People don't like new. So we've been, at least over at Meta Commercial, we've been trying to play against the stigma. I've never liked the answer no when it comes to the first time. So we usually try to have a conversation with them. There's multiple factors that can lead to a landlord saying no. The hardest one to get around, and I've only had a couple that even would consider it, is federally backed loans do not allow for cannabis use within anything that's backed by it. And there is a lot of SBA loans out there on a lot of these properties, or there are national loans. So having them with credit unions, things like that, it's very rare you run into a landlord that will do my bank is not going to tell me who I can lease to, so I will refinance away from them. So that's been the biggest definitive. Cities are still learning. That's been one of the biggest challenges is you have one section that wrote the rules, you have one section that approved the rules, and you have one section that upholds the rules. And unfortunately, they don't know the interpretations of A, and they don't know the intent of B. And so we multiple times we've already dealt with situations where we had original approval, we then submit for approval and then get denied, and then they go back and forth. And one person didn't deem this park a kid attraction, this person did deem it, and unfortunately the person who deemed it to be one is the one who gets to make the final decision. And so getting with them early, getting with them often, getting things in writing, that's kind of the easiest way to get around it. But I mean, cities and landlords are the two biggest hurdles right now for sure.
Okay, good.
Has there been any trends, like is it easier to procure a slab in greater Minnesota versus in the metro area?
Let me reiterate your question on the mic. So is it easier to get a lease or landlords outside of the greater Minnesota area or the Twin Cities area? Is there more challenges within city or outside of city, or is it all across the board?
I'd say everybody is completely different, unfortunately. I've had some cities that locally are fantastic to work with. Burnsville, places like that have been absolutely phenomenal. I've had more challenging places that were inside. Minneapolis, despite the fact that they're so open, are also very difficult to work with. I just had a conversation with Twin Lakes, which is down by Albert Lee, and I got cussed out by the mayor there. But I've also had conversations with the mayor over in Worthington, and he couldn't say enough about bringing as much business as he could. And so it really does come down to who's overseeing it. Counties have been a little bit more difficult; they're a little bit more restrictive. But again, at the same time, you have counties that want it because they see the value in it. They know that it's an industry that's coming in regardless. And so, unfortunately, it's kind of a back and forth. It's all going to depend on the city.
All right, so it seems like the city is a really big deal. So if you have a location that you're considering, the first thing is to talk to the city and get in their good graces, make friends, right? Also, can you speak to what are the first things that people should be doing when looking for location, like connecting with the city of your choice, but also speak to the fact that each city is different. Every local municipality has a whole different set of ordinances, and so if you maybe have 3 different locations you're considering, you have to not only look at that physical spot, can it facilitate what you're trying to do? Is the landlord friendly to it? But is it within the zoning laws? And the zoning laws for every single city is different from each other, and so it's probably one of the most challenging things to crunch through. What is the first step people should take in finding their, a friendly local municipality? Who do you talk to? Who do you call?
I guess the place that I would start, and what I tell my clients to do, is when you find a place that you're interested in, if we've talked to the landlord and the landlord is okay with the use, call your city planner. Get to know his name, her name, their name. They should also know your name. This is going to be your connection. As a real estate agent, I'm only going to be involved in your transaction not that long. I'm going to be gone. I'm going to step away, and you're going to be left at that city. You want to make that connection. Make those friends. They know their name, so they know your name. So when there's something's going on, you can pick up the phone and be like, "Hey, Susie, what's going on? I heard they're doing some construction over here. Is that going to affect my business? How long is that going to be going on?" These are the people you want to know. You want to know the people in these cities. So that's always my recommendation. Once you know that maybe the area that you're looking in is zoned properly, and maybe you have identified a couple properties that the landlord is okay with the use, I would talk to the city.
Yeah, I'd even go one further, and I'd get to know the city administrator. And the reason why I go as well to the administrator is you want them to know you. You got to remember that in a lot of these cities, there's going to be caps. So there's only going to be a few locations. And the impact you have on that community is going to dictate how they want to proceed going forward. Obviously, caps are removable. And trying to get with a city that understands the importance of that cap and getting them, the friendlier you can be with them, the more you can potentially influence moving forward. And, you know, I've got a couple locations that the city's capped out now, and where they're at, there's not anybody within 5 miles around. And I've told them, get involved in the community, give them a reason to not want to expand that list when they do reassess it in a couple years. Or they will put in restrictions when they do to say that you're not allowed someone within 1,000 or 2,000 feet of your location. And the city administrator is going to be the one, or the city manager, whichever they call it, same position, different cities. They are the ones who are going to directly influence both the planning commission as well as influence the city council. They will be the ones that they're going to listen to. They are the ones that are going to be the first ones to speak on something. And if they are against the idea of expanding, it will benefit you long run, because it will control the movement that city's going to have. Plus, if you leave, you know, you want to give a positive impact to be able to expand other things within the city as well. And I think getting with the city, checking zoning is going to be the biggest thing. Check schools, check daycares, check parks. If a park is somewhere in it, even if there is no attraction, get with the city to make sure. But that is going to be step one. The landlord, again, I would say is probably more important to get to than the city right off the bat, solely because if there's a federal loan, there's just no chance that they're going to probably get rid of it, unfortunately. And so don't waste your time on a property that you can't even look at, because you know it's going to be forever until you have any opportunity to do so. And so.
Okay, that's a good point. Also, just between, you know, the landlord and the city and the state and all your consultants, remember that you are the project manager of your company. So somebody might help you to get to the next step, but then they leave and you're still navigating your business. And so your team is the city planner and the real estate agent and the landlord and your consultants and your finance team, all of that, but you're pulling this whole project together. So don't forget that. And then it seems like as we're starting, between the landlords and the cities, they're a little skittish. They're going to be more restrictive out the gate. They're going to say no. And we don't always take no for an answer, but we do have to follow all the rules, right? So cracking the door, you know, getting that door cracked open so that you could get to the next step, right? Maybe they don't let you do this today, but they could let you do it tomorrow. If you're a good actor, you make friends, you're justified, like, oh, I feel safe, comfortable, happy, and warm, and I trust you and I believe you. Let's go ahead and shift our ordinance to be more open, right? So there's going to be an initial challenge, but, you know, we are making the change. So don't be afraid to say, well, what is the solution? If that's a no, how can it become a yes, and what can I do to make you feel safe? We have another question?
Yeah, I do. So I know a lot of cities and municipalities, people, I don't know if they're accepting leases or LOIs or purchase agreements. What's the best route to go when you're actually signing on with the landlord and submitting the application? Like, should we have the lease? Should we be like fully signed on, or do we just stick with the LOI?
Yeah,
Say it's
great.
a little bit lighter, it's not binding.
So are you talking about like when do you reach out to the city?
I'm talking about, like when's the best time to like move forward? Like, do we just move forward with our LOI?
So every city's a little different on it. I've actually just had a situation came up last week, kind of pertaining to what you're talking about. Hopkins,
yes.
Yeah.
They don't have any, they got 4 different licensees with the same property. That same $1 million property.
Yeah, actually, that's funny because that was the situation that came up. One tenant put in an LOI for the property, did not have it signed by the landlord, but they submitted with the city for the approval on that location and received it.
Yeah.
But they did not win the bid for that building. And now they are technically holding on to one of the 4 spots in Hopkins on a property that they don't have any ownership to. And the city of Hopkins is still under the belief that they cannot rescind that license application. So they have to actually submit to remove it. And so, originally my statement would have been wait until you actually have an LOI signed and you're moving to negotiations and you can definitively say you have a license before you submit to the city. However, every city's a little different. If the city does not have a landlord requirement for the application, the moment you submit an LOI on something, I hate saying it, but more than likely you want to get with the city and start the application process. I personally have been still advising to wait until you have an agreement on the LOI. Obviously, the LOI does not require, if people don't know what that is, that's a letter of intent. Sorry.
No, it's all good. I was going to do that anyway.
So when you're working on a lease or when you're working on a purchase of a commercial property, you're going to submit what's called a letter of intent, where you're basically informally negotiating the terms of your lease and you're informally negotiating the terms of the purchase. There is you have no binding contract when it comes to a letter of intent. When both parties have that signed, that is usually when you move to the purchase agreement or you move to an actual lease agreement. The reason for the letter of intent is more for the lease side of things, mainly because leases are usually drawn up by lawyers, and they're drawn up with a lot of additional requirements, and they don't want to just do that on anybody who comes through because it would be costly. So my personal recommendation is to wait until you have that LOI signed and you guys are actually working on a lease, submit to the city at that point and get that property locked in. With that said, doing it earlier, clearly as we learned in the Hopkins situation, there's risk that comes with that. There's issues that can come with it, but if the city's going to allow it, you don't want to risk running into a situation like that where someone else submits instead. And you end up losing out. We have one in St. Louis Park right now that we're basically submitting the same thing on. We're right now in the process. We just started an LOI with them, but we had a situation on the property next to it. They do not have their letter of intent in with the city yet, and so we are actually submitting as of right now, even though we just started negotiating on that property. I also am very confident our client will get it, so it is something that obviously costs money to do. And so that's kind of the drawback. It is non-refundable to submit an application fee to a city. And so if you don't win the property, you do risk being out that money. But you also don't want to risk that situation where someone else decides to do it even though they didn't win the bid, and now you're sitting here trying to figure out what to do.
Okay, so it sounds like there's a time is of the essence. You're going to have to invest with some risk ahead of time. A letter of intent is just a letter saying we intend to move forward together, but it's not legally binding. There aren't any terms of that situation. But you're saying once you have a letter of intent, you should move forward and start trying to lock that in. And then also I wanted to understand more about the Hopkins situation. Okay, sure. So you said that there's 4 letters of intent on one property, and only one licensee can be per that facility. So is this landlord just taking letters of intent, saying "May the best one win"?
No,
and
it was
like, how does that work?
it was
So I don't know. My understanding was that the property, the town of Hopkins or the city of Hopkins wants this property to be a dispensary. So this is what they want. And so they're really pushing for it. So the landlord and the town are working together. They gathered licensees, and like you said, the first one submitted without it signed. Then I think there were 2 or 3 other that had like put bids on it, but they all submitted with the bids, unless I misunderstood that.
Yeah, so what happened there was we were originally in negotiations on the property with a client. That client decided that was not the property he wanted, so he had moved away. Another company had come in and started working with the landlord to get the property. We then had brought in a second client. He wanted it. We actually had won the bid. They had called us saying they wanted to go with us. However, when my client went to go submit to the city, we found out that the first people who were negotiating with them filed with the city for one of their limited license locations. And they got registered through the city as one of those licenses for that location. And then they ended up not winning the bid. They wanted to go with our bid.
Their application was still in, and so there's like...
Correct. So they were negotiating on the property. And at the same time, even though they did not have anything definitive with the landlord, they did not have the landlord say yes, they did not have the landlord agree to terms on any LOI, they still went and submitted with the city, registering them as though they were going to be moving there. And then the landlord decided to go with a different offer, which now has hosed the whole thing up because of the fact. And then the landlord's pissed a little bit because now he feels that the city's almost forcing him to go with the first applicant, even though they were not as qualified as we were. And so he still wants to go with us. So now my client is having to essentially negotiate with the first party to try to buy them to cancel the registration so he can register his business to it. And again, Hopkins will admit they screwed up. They did not think about this when they created the ordinance. They did not think about this when they created the registration. And I have seen it since it started. It's been one of the things I've noticed. A lot of cities do not have landlord approval as one of the registration requirements for registering as a dispensary.
So yes, follow-up question.
So I come from New York, but like my family lives in Mankato, stuff like that. So I actually own dispensaries in New York, and I'm representing one of my clients here. And in New York, there was a bunch of lawsuits because of this exact issue.
Yeah.
Because people were submitting with LOIs that weren't signed, and what the state ended up doing was they said, you know what? No more LOIs. You have to have a lease. Minnesota, they don't do it now, but most likely they're going to change that. And so,
they almost have to.
Yeah, but if you can get in with an LOI, get in now with the LOI. Don't let them change it on you, because once they change it, now you got to lock into the lease. You might get a lease, and then something happens, and you can't get in. You might not get approved for the property.
Now you can't get out.
But now you're
lease.
Stuck in the lease. You're stuck in a 10-year lease, a 5-year lease, and it's happened to me. And I've had to pay a bunch of money to get out of it. And so, I want people to understand what's going on. Like, if you get in now, get in as soon as possible.
Because there's also going to be some version of grandfathering. If you get in now under the current set of rules and you get through the gauntlet, then you're not subjected to the second set of rules, or you're subjected to a different version of upgrading it. You're still in compliance. They'll give you a certain amount of time to roll over into the next phase. But if you lag too long, you're subjected to the first set, and then the second set, and then the third set, and now you're just jumping around, spending up your money and your time and resources trying to chase around an ever-changing landscape. So I guess in summary, the cities are still building the ship as they're flying it. You can't just go to them and they have a clear picture, step 1, 2, 3, and then you'll be successful. There's a lot of running around in circles, backtracking, different information. So that's why we have industry professionals to help sort through this, but also just do your due diligence and say, what is my first step before the second step? And you might have to do a couple steps at once. It is very confusing and crunchy, and even more so because it's a brand new industry that we're all building. So don't be afraid to work with the city and work with the officials and say, why is it this way? Can it change? How do we make the change, right? Jesselyn, did you have?
Oh, no, I wanted to introduce Matthew Robinson.
Okay, can we put him on the mic if you,
Oh, yeah.
just because we're recording this and I want to make sure we can hear everything, so if you don't mind just.
Hello, everyone. My name is Matthew Robinson. I've been coming back and forth to Minnesota since my sister moved out here a few years ago. So I have like family ties here, but I also own several dispensaries in New York, and I own one in Jersey. I didn't have a lot of money, so I wasn't like a rich person. I grinded to get here. But yeah, I'm here to help, and just if you got questions, you can ask me questions as well.
Thank you very much. And, you know, someone who's been through multiple different states, who's seen different versions of the story and got through the gauntlet in multiple different states, that's very commendable, especially for someone who doesn't just have all the backing and have all the information. You're not an MSO or a big corporation. So it can be done. It's very challenging, but you can speak with him about his experience after the panel. I'm sure he would love to stick around and share with you. Do you have another question?
Well, I wanted to know if the challenges are the same for, I'm looking at Mark and thinking about like someone that wants to open up a resort versus someone that wants to open a grow or a retail space.
Great question. So yeah, does it depend on license? Like how does the different license types affect your decisions and the steps that you'll take to move forward to accessing a physical location? If you're cultivator versus manufacturer versus dispensary, a lot of weight is put on the dispensaries, but then we don't really talk about all the other aspects of the industry. So how are they different?
There's not a ton that's different. You are seeing more conditional use permits when it comes to cultivation, and you see that more in the rural areas, not quite so much within the metro. They're very good at kind of supplying them into the industrial area. They may do like light industrial, but then they'll do a conditional use permit requirement. That's kind of the only real big difference right now. Landlords are a little bit more friendly to it as long as their loan's not against it. Again, they see the risk isn't quite so there. They're not, quite cash dependent and all that type of stuff. So you don't see the hatred you do for retail out of the landlord side. But the conditional use side can be a little bit more challenging. I know that was kind of one of the questions.
Yeah, I was going to say, can you go deeper into like what does it mean to be conditional use? What does a conditional use permit mean, and how is that different from not getting one? And then you're telling me a story about one of the cities said everything has to go through the conditional use permit process in order to get a license. With my city at all, everything is conditional use. So can you tell us more about that?
So conditional use permit, the two zoning requirements is either approved or conditionally approved. When it's a conditional use permit, you are going to have to submit through the planning commission and you are going to have to submit through city council usually. That process can be different depending on the county and the city, but there's kind of a uniformed method of how they will do it. So if it's approved, you're just going to register with the city. The city's going to verify everything that you are zoning compliant and everything. They will then issue you a registration. If it's conditional use, they're going to require you to fill out a conditional use permit. You're going to have to pay a fee. Some, if not most cities, will require an escrow account to be established with the city as well. They will determine how much is going to be required in there based on how much work they believe they're going to have to do. And then you're going to usually have to submit plans for the build out. The main thing we're seeing a lot of times, and especially with cultivation, is smell mitigation. That is why a lot of cities are requiring it, is they want to ensure that the smell is mitigated to a standard that they believe is acceptable. You will then submit that to the Planning Commission. The city then will do one of two things. They will either put it on the docket or they will schedule a special hearing for it, which a lot of times will notify the public of. A lot of times it's within a set distance from that location, and they will essentially let people know that they will be hearing for an application and that it will be held on such and such date. It will then go in front of the Planning Commission. They will review it and either approve it or they are going to add their own stipulations and changes to it. That recommendation then will be sent to City Council. Again, everyone's going to be a little bit different. This is when they also may notify the public, or they may not notify the public at all. I know like Burnsville, the main property right now we're working on there is conditional use requirement. They said it was for smell mitigation. They've joked with me the whole time because they don't really care. It's right next to the dump, so it might improve the smell there. But they said it's just a formality, so we're not concerned by that one. Once it goes to the Planning Commission, they'll review it. Then once it goes to City Council, they will review not only your application, they will then also review the edits that the Planning Commission had recommended, and then they will make a ruling and a decision. Most of the time, it will be done that day. That process will take, give or take, usually 30 to 45 days, depending on how quickly you can get on the dockets for those. However, the city, if there is backlash, if they do a public hearing and a lot of people come out against it, they may ask for a stay of up to 60 days for review. That is when things can start getting a little bit dicey. They can basically say that we need more time to make a decision. So they will ask for a 30-day, a 60-day extension, and then they can also potentially ask for another one. All while they're using that money that you established in that escrow account. So they will be paying their lawyers to review your application if need be. They will be paying a professional to review your smell mitigation, and all of that will usually come out of your escrow account. Once the city has approved it, anything remaining will be returned to you. You will then be issued your registration at the end of that period. That's why a lot of people are afraid of it. Be hesitant of them, but don't be afraid of them. Get with the city, get with the county, find out why are they issuing it. As she had said, Farmington actually, the entire city is open. There is no zoning restrictions of any kind for cannabis within the city limits of Farmington. However, their entire city is CUP. So everything is conditional use permit. I've spoken with the city. I actually know Joshua really well, the mayor. And I had asked him, like, okay, so are you saying that I could put a grow over off Pilot Knob right in the middle of where right next to the daycare? And he's like, well, no, more than likely you need to stick with the registration. So if it's retail, we're probably only going to want retail. If it's industrial, we're only going to want industrial. But we just want final say of where things are going to go. So getting with them, finding that out, I know I'm not going to try to stick a retail in their industrial area with the grow. They're going to tell me no, and they're going to make me change that outright. But getting with the city about it, getting with the county, will at least tell you why they're doing it, what they're looking for, and how much of a risk will it be that they may not approve it if you get all the way to the city council.
Are there any resources for people that haven't dealt with the city before that they can maybe go to besides their real estate agents to help them?
Their lawyer? That's their lawyer and the real estate is going to be the two primary people. I would recommend getting with a realtor early in the process. 99% of realtors are going to not cost you anything up front. There may be a fee post-closing if the seller's not willing to pay compensation, but definitely I would recommend reaching out to a realtor you trust. I would also recommend reaching out to a realtor or a commercial broker that actually specializes or in some way works with cannabis. There's a lot of additional regulations that go into it that your standard commercial broker is not necessarily going to know about, and they will pretend that they do. We deal with it every day, all day. We've actually directly helped other commercial brokers manage through the process as well, because my department, I specialize in this. I am the director of it, so I am the one who kind of oversees all of our agents. And anybody who has problems come to me. I also deal with, and I help Coldwell Banker. I help, we help other agents as well on top of that, but those are going to be your biggest resources.
All right, so you're you help people find other realtors. So Jared is a broker, and if he can't help you, he does know other people that can help you. He'll just get you to the right place, right? So there's at some point we're all going to reach capacity. We're going to have to start passing referrals on to each other. Right? So I just wanted to sum up. There's the planning commission and the city council. Those are the two main jams of your city. But then the city and the county kind of lumped together as well, especially where it comes to either population size. There's a population requirement, 1 dispensary per 20 or 12,500 people. And then there's also, if the county might have their own ordinance, and then the city might have their own ordinance, or the other way around, the city defaults to the county. So again, each one is different. I wanted to speak, or have one of you guys speak about this, the 1 dispensary per 12,500 people, and if certain local cities can zone you out, or if they say, oh, that city has 2,000 people in really small rural areas, I don't need one here because they've got that covered. How does that all come into play? And then second to that is like some of these non-friendly places will say you can operate as long as it's within the zoning, and then you can't find a location that's within their zoning. So they didn't ban it, they just made it impossible for you to go there. And so they're not breaking the law, but they'll get crafty and creative about how to get you out of there without breaking the law, right? So that kind of stuff will happen. There was a question in there somewhere.
Yeah, the biggest thing is cities can limit it, counties can limit it. If you have an uncapped city, the cap in the county still mandates outside of that city. So use, what county was I just talking about? I don't remember what county I was just speaking to. But let's just say the county has a limit of 10 locations, and one city within that location has 11. They will not allow any other dispensaries within the county that they oversee and jurisdict. We have run into situations where the city does the zoning, but they don't do the registration for the cannabis client. The county then is going to be the one who dictates that number. So even though they do their own zoning, if they don't dictate the license registration as well, you are subject to the county's limitations, not the city's limitations. And so it can get a little convoluted, it can get a little tricky, and it gets very annoying really quick. I won't even pretend on that. There's nothing more annoying than when you have to call the city for zoning, and then you have to call the county for registration, and then you're dealing with two entities at once who, yeah, 100% every single time too. So.
Do you guys want to speak to that at all?
Really, that's just kind of that all there is to it, in the way that they make their own rules. And right now, like we said before, there is no guidelines for this industry. So our actions with the counties and with the cities are going to help make these rules. The way we interact with them and the way that we help them kind of quantify what's going on in their cities and in their counties, we're going to help them do that, and it literally is asking, just, you need to know these people, you need to be in contact with them all the time. Even you have the slightest question, call them and ask them. They might not get back to you right away, but the more they know your name, the more information you will get from them, and the easier they will be to work with. Once you get into their city, and they, like Jared was talking about before, they're going to change these laws and rules as this industry progresses. The more you're in good standing with that city, the more they're going to look to you for direction. And when you want to get, when you want to apply for an event, you're in great standing. Why wouldn't you want them to have an event? So it's so much about you. You carry so much of this industry in your hands right now, you know, and that's why I think it's really important to get with professionals like lawyers and real estate agents so we can all figure this out without there being too much damage to the entrepreneurs that are sitting in front of us. You know, this is not an easy space that you are in. You know, navigating a startup is like nothing else. And when you're doing it in this space where it's so rule and regulation heavy, the best thing you can do for yourself is ask questions. It's the best thing that you can do.
Absolutely. And getting a lawyer involved is very key as well. As brokers, we deal with leases every day. However, we are not lawyers. So the legalese within a lease document, the lease is going to be written usually by the landlord. You will want your lawyer to review that lease to ensure that you are protected under a lot of different things. A commercial broker cannot help you with that. We will defer you to a lawyer because we don't speak legalese. We can only speak on what we've seen. We can help navigate it. We can ensure that certain things are there that will protect you. But at the end of the day, the lawyers are going to be the ones who can be able to help you a little bit further than we can on that type of stuff.
We're there to help you negotiate those points in the lease that maybe you don't agree with, or you would prefer they would be phrased in a certain way to allow you more room to navigate.
And that's very important. I'm going to just go back to the conditional use permit we were talking about. Data. You're going to need data when you're going into these permits and conditional use stuff. As much foot traffic data, community-driven data, letters of support. Those things are important when you're applying for those conditionals. As far as once you get your building and you're into and you're getting your real estate agent or you're getting your attorney, make sure you have an attorney that knows cannabis when you're reviewing these leases. Because I made a mistake. When I first started, I took my original real estate agent and I thought, oh, you can review this lease for me. She reviewed it, sent it back, and then I sent it and they're like, this isn't right, this is wrong. So I had to go and get a cannabis attorney. Someone that knows how to structure a lease for cannabis. Certain words that are in there, certain languages that are going to be in that lease are going to be very cannabis specific. One of my leases, the landlord said, you can only sell cannabis, nothing else. I couldn't sell lighters, I couldn't sell rolling papers, I couldn't sell hemp, I couldn't sell hat, I can only sell cannabis. And so my lawyer, luckily I had a good lawyer, she called it and hey, we got to take this out and go over it again. So please make sure you find cannabis-friendly lawyers and attorneys that know how to structure these leases.
And that's even true if you're purchasing a property. And the reason I say that is because one of the very first properties that I worked on was a purchase for somebody. And because it was our very first one, we were a little ignorant to some of the language that might be in that we weren't used to, pulling out and being aware of. We got to almost the closing table, and our closer thankfully saw in the closing documents that the title company could not the title company could not insure the property because in that title was that it could not be used for cannabis or any other legal thing, and thankfully that was caught for us because we would have just signed on a property that our client meant for a dispensary that she would have not been able to use for a dispensary, and so these are the things that, are new to us. And so these are the things that we're working with and trying to figure out and navigate. It is very important to have people that know what they're doing and know what they're talking about for sure.
The lawyers I'd recommend, Carol Moss has been absolutely phenomenal. She was actually a civil litigator against cities. She was protecting low potency and tobacco prior to getting into cannabis. I would recommend her wholeheartedly. Carol Moss over at Helmuth and Johnson, Mitch Shargo, and Jason Trask are the three that I would strongly recommend one of those. All three of them have been doing this for a very long time. They're extremely knowledgeable when it comes to cannabis rules, laws, and regulations. And same goes with city ordinances and city regulations as well.
Yeah, so there is an upfront cost, but the cost of not doing it right the first time is more expensive because then you have to redo it. He had an attorney, he had to pay that first attorney, and then he had to pay that second attorney. And if you sign the lease and you've restricted yourself unknowingly, you're locked into a lease and all the terms of all the payments that you have to do to break that lease, and then pay another attorney to help you break that lease, and so on and so forth. So there's going to be an upfront cost. You're going to need all of your professional team. And vetting that out in the first place is really important. And getting people who have cannabis-specific industry level knowledge. Now, not just, full disclosure, not all of us know everything either. The OCM doesn't know everything. The cities don't know everything. The CPA doesn't know everything. Well, the CPA knows everything. He has to. The attorneys, the real estate. So we all talk to each other. We come here. We come to other industry events. We're always sharing information, trying to stay up to date. If there's a conflict between us and what the OCM says, we go talk to the OCM. We help clarify for our clients and come back to you. So there's this whole communication system, and we're not always right, but you do have to read every word, and then you have to talk it out. Like, what does that sentence mean to you? What does it mean to me? Do we have the same terms and definitions, right? Do we think that this says the same thing? Because once that's signed and the money's down, you're locked in, right? So anyway, very important to have your professional team out the gate and have them vetted. Yep, go for it.
So also, I just want to let people know, when you don't have a lot of money, because I know that's that's going to be a major issue for a lot of people. Not everybody, because some people are going to have money. But when you don't have a lot of money, you have to do the research yourself to start, to save yourself money. So stuff that you should always keep in hand or always have are the Black's Law Dictionary. If you don't know what that is, it's the legal dictionary. What the courts and what the lawyers use, it has different language for the words. Like what's in the Webster's dictionary means something totally different in the Black Laws Dictionary. So get a Black Laws Dictionary, read that, study it. When you don't know words, you don't understand language, refer to that, because that's what they're basing their terminology on. You're not going to hear that from a lot of people, but that's what you need to do.
All right, that's really good information. Thank you. Because, there's words that we see every day and we're like, we think it means this, and an attorney will say, nope, that means something totally different. So you kind of have to you have to become a mini attorney and a mini CPA and a mini real estate broker, just enough to run your business. When you are running a business, you do have to understand enough about your business to conduct that business, right? So I guess I wanted to backtrack just a little bit to something you had talked about earlier, Jared. And this rolls into our terms and definitions and nomenclature. We don't all agree that the words mean the same thing, right? So you had a situation where the city said you have to be a certain amount of distance from a park. Well, what is a park? What is not a park? Okay, a park is where minors or people underage could congregate and could then potentially be exposed to whatever it is that you're doing. Okay, well, there's a fountain. And the fountain, is that a park? Are people going to congregate? Oh, that's a splash pad. Is it a splash pad? Is it a fountain? Is it a park? What does it mean? I don't know. We have to go back to the drawing board and I'll discuss what the word means now, right? So can you just speak briefly to the fact that we don't all agree on the same words and you really have to say, what is your definition of this word? And does it agree with mine? Are we saying the same thing before I sign this paper?
Yeah, again, that comes back to the three branches of even local government. In this case, it was in St. Louis Park. We had a property locked in. Landlord was okay with it. City was okay with it. I had confirmed it was okay with the city. So did my clients. So did the landlord. Across the street was a fountain within a park, just a little strip center, nothing else there. There's a walking path that took you through it only. And I mean, we're talking, I think this thing was maybe 25 feet by 15 feet. But there was a fountain there. And when my client went to go submit to the city for final approval to register, the person who registered said no, that this property, it's within 500 feet of a park. I went back with my documents. He went back with his documents. They came back and said, no, sorry, we're wrong. We'll correct it. Only to have them all sit down with one of the council members, and the council member goes, no, that's a splash pad. Kids play in there all the time. That's going to count. And so they were then forced by the council to rule it as an attraction, which then de-used that spot from being permitted for a retail spot. And so kind of goes back to what we were originally talking about how the person who wrote the laws, the person who approved the laws, and the person who enforces the laws are all different people. And unfortunately, it's all based on interpretation sometimes. And we have the same issue, not quite that issue, it was a different issue in Shakopee, where we were in the process of buying a property in their downtown district, which was classified as B3. Micros were allowed in B3, but retail cultivation and manufacturing is not allowed in B3. And so I'm like, okay, well, what's allowed then? The only thing left is a consumption lounge, but in there it said it was an accessory use allowed only, meaning, if you run into that, by the way, accessory use means, in most cases, means that it can't be the primary use for that location. So you'll see it a lot of times with retail in industrial, where they will allow retail as long as it is under, say, 15% of the footprint, and that there is a other primary use within that building. So I'm like, okay, so you allow a consumption lounge as long as it's attached to something else, but then you don't allow it to be attached to anything else. And they basically came back and said, yeah, we apologize, it was a mistake that we're gonna have to correct probably. And it's just like, that's the frustration you will see a lot of times in this industry. As hard as it is to admit, we're all humans. We all make mistakes. Cities make mistakes. Even Hopkins admitted, yeah, we probably should have put a provision in that makes it so the landlord has to approve it as well. Unfortunately, they didn't. And so they can only uphold what was written. They can't redictate and re-regulate. Now, according to my lawyers, they could have dropped it, but they didn't. Their lawyer told them they couldn't. And so again, it comes down to opinion and interpretation of the law. And unfortunately, that's where lawsuits come in. I directly asked the director, Eric, at one of the events that I was at, whether or not the OCM was going to self-regulate or if they were planning to regulate local ordinances. And they basically said it's on us, almost in those direct words. So unfortunately, cities are going to put in illegal ordinances. They're going to put in stupid ordinances. They're going to put in stupid rules. To me, the whole daycare thing is the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. Why would a daycare matter if it's right next to a dispensary? Toddlers don't care. They're not going to be like, ooh, a pot leaf, I want to smoke weed now at 3 years old. Like, they don't have a clue, so why would a daycare matter? But unfortunately, it mattered to somebody. And unfortunately, we are only governed by what they're going to do, and cities have final say. The OCM made it very clear that that's what they wanted. Cities supposedly made it very clear that's what they wanted, even though I talked to a lot of cities that is not what they wanted. They wanted direction. And unfortunately, we have to live within their rules. So get with them early, get with them often, but do understand that just because they say yes in the beginning doesn't mean it's going to be yes until they physically register that location and hand you the registration. There is no yes. And then
in writing.
Even getting it in writing doesn't necessarily. We've had emails documenting, and they come back and say, no, they were wrong, sorry, they misinterpreted it. And so work to get that registration, get with the fire chief, get with the police chief, get their okay, get their sign off. Like he had said, if you are a conditional use, the more people that they trust saying yes, the more they're going to trust you. They don't know you. To them, you're a salesperson. Everyone here has the greatest idea. Everyone here is the greatest person in the world. They don't know you, though. If someone they know says yes, if the city planner's like, yeah, they've been great to work with. If the police chief comes out and goes, yeah, I looked over their security plan. It's phenomenal. They are very well protected and know what they're doing. Your council is going to trust you more. The people are going to trust you more, and it's going to make your life a lot easier, especially once you get operational.
Awesome, thank you. So we have about 5 minutes left. I have one more statement / question, and then I want to see if anyone else has any other questions in the crowd. So there is, like, zoning is not specific to cannabis. Every city has zoning ordinance. There's general blanket, like this is zoned for agriculture. That might be a good place to go look for that cannabis cultivation operation because you are in agriculture. There's some fun or preliminary work you can do to say, well, yeah, I'm not going to put my dispensary in an industrial zone or in an ag zone. So is it zoned commercial? Is it zoned ag? Is it zoned industrial? That would be the first place to look for your zoning, something you can do yourself. A lot of cities have zoning maps of their own area. Some of them are even overlaying cannabis zoning on top of them as they're able to. So, searching for that zoning map is a great place to start. And then, I don't have a question in there, but does anyone else in the crowd have a question? And then I'll take final statements from the panelists. Is this thoroughly clear, thoroughly confusing, thoroughly inspiring? All right, cool. Anyone else on the panel, do you have any final statements or words of wisdom for our people? Oh, okay, we do have one. Go for it. Great question. So the question is, how can you guys stay in touch with us and get connected to more resources? They'll have business cards and they'll stick around afterwards. You can connect with them one-on-one. I'm with the Minnesota Craft Cannabis Guild. You can sign up for our newsletter or on our website, and we will let you know when new events are coming up and who's going to be speaking and when. We're trying to every week have something here at Earl Giles for you guys to come to and learn from. The first Wednesday of every month, we're going to have an OCM representative as we're able to come and speak to you. Last week we had Hannah Timms talk about testing standards. I'm not sure who we'll have next month, but we're working on getting someone to talk about metric, somebody to talk about enforcement and inspections, what to expect with enforcement. Things like that. So you can come here to Earl Giles. This is a hub for that information and the professionals. And just stay in touch with us. Get on our newsletter list, and we'll just put it out there every time we have something. But usually they're really, we try to have high quality information for you guys, and it's all free. I mean, you'll have to hire these guys to go down the rabbit hole, but at least getting you connected with them, we want that to be a free resource. So.
Yeah, kind of touching what she was just talking about. It definitely check out zoning beforehand. It kind of makes your life a little easier, but just don't assume. Just because it's zoned industrial doesn't mean they allowed industrial to have it. There's a lot of subcategories as well. Industrial 1, Industrial 2, I1, I2, I3. And they're only going to put it in I3 limitedly. And so definitely want to get with a professional, check this stuff out. As far as what he was just kind of talking about, if you are, I've got a bunch of business cards I can hand out. If there's anything you're missing or needing, we've been, as Meta Commercial Cannabis, we have been around now for about 2 years. In the last 18 months, we have been networking and building up a referral base for vendors. So it's people we have personally vetted and our recommendations out to. We've kind of become a one-stop shop as far as fill in the blanks goes. So if you need a security person, we have security that we can recommend to you. Lawyers, POS systems, online systems, kind of you name it, banking, finance. I mean, I've got an entire vendor list of multiple different categories. We've got rebates people, things like that. And so feel free to reach out anytime. I'm always an open book. If you need just a referral or a recommendation from someone, I definitely can help people out on that. But yeah, I mean, this is a very tricky industry. Retail is getting filled up. I only know of 2 cities that have met their caps so far. So, and Austin. Austin filled theirs. Mankato and Austin both are filled right now. Rochester, I believe, either has one left or is gone now. I got to double check. As of last week, they still had 1 location of very left. Few cities were down to 1 here and there. I've actually got about 350 emails I have to go through right now because I just resent out a message to every city to find out where they were at so I can continue building my master sheet. But there's still property out there. There's a lot more places that don't have caps than you'd think. But also the other piece, and I hate saying this, but you're not going to find a unicorn. You're going to have to settle on something, and you have to understand that if you find a property that fits close to what you're looking for in the area you want, and the landlord is okay with it, if you are looking to move now, you are going to have to move on that property. Even if it isn't the perfect location, even if it's a little bit bigger than you wanted, finding someone or finding a property that wants you in a city that wants you, that is zoned, is very difficult in some areas. I've got 3 people wanting Coon Rapids. I have not found one location yet that would permit in Coon Rapids. In Coon Rapids, a lot of strip malls. There's not a lot of freestanding buildings. They're going to have to probably buy in order to go into Coon Rapids because the strip mall owners are just not allowing it. So when you find something, if it is close to what you want, do not continue looking. Get on it right away. Get an LOI in, build a lease, get with the city, and start working on locking that location down.
I don't have too much to add to that, other than the fact that one thing we didn't talk about that I do want to mention is that make sure that your personal financials are in order. Also, because these landlords will be asking for them. They will want personal guarantees. They will want to see your business plan. They will want to know. They will want to see your cap table. They want to know who's investing. They want to know just as much as the state does. So just make sure all that stuff is in order. And the beauty of it is once you get it in order, you can present it, as it needs to be presented. So it's just working with somebody to just get it together. So.
Scared money don't make money.
Yes.
Yeah, and on what she was saying, personal income statement. If you don't know what that is, look it up and learn to build it. That is the number one thing landlords are asking for right now is personal income statements. They want to know what money do you have liquid, what assets do you have, and why should I trust you? That's what that statement is. That's what that statement will be. And we are running into, because again, landlords believe that 76% of all businesses fail in the cannabis industry. That is a statistic. It's a loaded statistic, but it is still what they follow and believe under. They think that you are going to fail. They want to make sure that you don't. The stronger that looks, the better. You will get turned down for a lease if you do not have a strong enough personal income statement. So make sure to learn what that is, learn how to build it up, and make sure it looks as strong as possible. Again, you can get with realtors, you can get with professionals, CPAs. They all can help you build that as well.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. Again, for staying in touch with us, you can go to our website, mnccg.com. That's Minnesota Craft Cannabis Guild, mnccg.com. We also have a Facebook page. We were kicked off of Instagram. We're not super tech savvy, so we don't have that back yet. But find us on Facebook, website, and then all of these recordings go onto our YouTube channel, so you can rewatch all of them. If you didn't make it, or I like to rewatch multiple times because I catch things the second, third, fourth time that I didn't catch the first time. So that's all free up on our YouTube channel. So those are all different ways to find us. And Jesselyn here, who is our operations manager, who's behind the scenes making all this go. And I appreciate all of you. And she has some coaching
Sorry, I'm not very good at this. I just wanted to, so one of the things that is kind of a big difference between the traditional market and the regular market, or the market, the legal market that we're moving into, is in the legal market, good ideas don't get funded, good plans do. You've got to do your homework. You've got to document every blessed thing. It's going to seem really counterintuitive, because in the traditional market, that's called evidence. But really, you need to document every blessed thing. Yes, and start using email. Keep your emails. You're going to want to if you have a side conversation with somebody, recap that conversation in email and send it to them and say, this is what I understood I understood that we agreed on. Is this your recollection as well? And ask them to respond in the affirmative. That's like the poor man's legal
documentation. I can't think of the right word, but covering, yes, CYA. Thank you, Miss Leah. That's by CYA. So great, good ideas don't get green-lighted, good plans do, and document everything. Thanks.
Okay, guys. Thank you, guys.